يتحاوس يتحاوس تحواوسك ولا حرماز مسلي ولا فرج مسلي كلاتنا فرج نمسل بدحريو قولي حلي زريك يلا بغرت خذ قداس يلا فينيتا
بل دحن انا نقيك كتب لعنك اخريك
دحن او عيا تراي سختت يا مخن الرئينا دحن
او تبلا شخو قحت الكاي
سختت يوم ودحن سختت يا تراي عند علم كما يوعدكم عند علم
انت معكم ميلكم
كما لكم كنكم قصنا فوتورينا قصنا فوتورينا تاخذك اليوم هلا بالك كما كنك دعاني نام مسجن كفلوا
بزي خفل ماما يعني حراي زمدقي حراي
هيلن مسحر قرب
بعليك قرب لهم
امو ايدك حصب
بعليك حصبومي دحن ألم ودي شباب براي تقول سمسينا عنا عطينا
هو انا كو بزا نفسي معره وسخلاني
حقه
امو بصحاي عندكم ماتيكم قال زي انا كوي لك نيري انا سفليت اي انا رئي باش كتكت امبري كم زباله خبرتي نمن يبو قالي
اسكو حجي نحكي اخا اتخول لا تقيد انك اتقالي
ايه سخا
انت ماما نشتي ذي قرب نشتي ذي تبلعو دحن هيليني اجي من عندنا لنا مسينا امك عنكم تاكلوا
انت كان علم غيرنا لكنا اخنت ولن قالي انت سكيفو كاين تعلم وده
هاي سكيفو
اين كوينو
سكيفو وقاعد صحاك ود ابينا نتنيحو واي انت علمي اذا حدارك تقول ودلهم
كريس خا بعال عالم داخل ما حدر حضرك يكبدن فريقي هيدا استين عناي قلت في ساعات غدنا له
وا نبي خمت طبو وا محضر لهنا هيلون قالي نقرا ما قدنا انا ريك نبلكم النمبر محضر لهنا
اوه نزاقتكم ريك نبل نمبر تهوخنا هنا نعنا انت تقلت فيه
حري
تتصاوتوا سي صبغ نيرو
بلو علم ودي صباح سنبت تقاطركم عيبلنا مسح مسانا جزانا اختوعلو
كلتينا
اوخني تهم ايه سرح لك هادي
اي انا سي سرحي بالليل من انا بعد هيل سرح خيلو امبر
اوه يا بالله معري سنبتي عرفتي كنا تينا قالي ماما
هو ما انا ولكو شو عرفت خيلي هيلن ما اصدقت حصبي خي الذكاء انت قوينا انا بيني بصحي له زي نصنت
ولا كبنتني كلتكم عدمناكم سي بينها تمطنا
اوه من انت قوينا سي كلتكم بعمصنا زمدقه
دحن
هذا صويت موعل وا
حراي كلتينا خمتينا
انا سي
انا سي تبل آلة كلتهم دعموا
هي دعموا صنا
نص زمدقة
دحني برحمة
امين شو انتم ودي اذا قالي سي يجقنا الاخير له
انت سبيتي تسألني الكيف مسلمي
انت المتي متسلة ايستبهركم منهم انا مسبالك علل دليم بري بيني يزمت يبلنا انت ده بيجمعوا قلنا
حقو حالي الله خون بحرك حنت سنبت غينا تعرفتاس كتقم لنا عين خون
هاي نسخ انت بس وقتها بالي سنبت ندرت حسبت اكرم عين كاتلبكم
سبابكم كنبري نبالي ذهب عدل سنمن هيبو سباب
هاي سبب ساكوكم ايستو علكم من الله كل نغراتو سايستو علكم من الله
انت قدفي كم عندك كذا حدا خيت زرقلا قد في يزبلك زلخو
انا زرقت حذركم كل نعنايدا نعناي قسينا تكونوا تخرينا
انت خازا كابو تخدنيا
هارري زل زرق كدنوني
تخدنيا هر مون تخي قبركي
عقلي كتبليو ابي ليك حزن براي كدنوني
تخدني مودحن تخدني طراي تنعي عقلي زصبلي كن ايردكني
نتك طراي اذا عجبك مش
وا اذا بورصه خدي انا معسيا
زراتي ناس هاوي كبد بايزن صلي اندي مش رايك كانيري
اقمطي بلا اقمطي زربا خي تبزحي اقمطي
وا تسيرك الله تبي كقمطي انا زقمطه
بزعبا تاسيرخن كالنا وتخن عين عالم تاي مكتني ولا في صلاه خيت غدي
حبيب معري زين صلي بورصه خلنا نسي في استلت شكيمان غزانا خيت نالت كاس ودي بعلى خفلت تم ولدي كنت خبلني جيران كم زي جبرت ايدهم كسبرت
نايناتي بعلي يفلط مش
صبوزي وقتول كتغنده بعلى خفلتوا
بلا انا خنغركي ولا نتا بورصه خب فيستال شتينكي اتخدمبر طرياس هاي نخيدين
وي اني انت املخ انت يجيك انس
زورد املخ كابزا سفرو بطقي كتورد يدليخ بجاخوم غيركي تمار يعزبكي زله هيلن
دحانسوس نقلتينا عذبنا له تسرح جنا عنا شايفيني
نعناي
أتا بتعيدي سعينا سويت مثل خيط كوطا ذاك يلا
أتقول عسقول كنا عنا يتزيل لي جزاخ ملسك يعني أبزي أين تاكس سكال
كفينا على زين خيط بقرنا
ما أسكن أتو صباح
وين ألم كم يقولكم إيه بريل ألم أركي لما عزنا معك أم جرجر نعم تزور لها
جد
هلو كم يوم وإذا أوكي لا تطبق الكي نسقط فنجة خزي
طبعا يسرح لك هذا
وبالليل إيه مسحهم دفي
نحن يزحوا يسرح لنا نحن ناس كلنا طري
أنا بأما مسحهم كألل من جفاز مقبل
عن كان معك متيخة تعلل
الرايبل هلو مو تشاو
برهاني
سلام
تشاو برهاني تشاو عتي
إيه
انت دخل كي اخي خندز خنقدك تصنحي
انت قبل دار سخر يكون كنزلخو
اندعي ولا عيني خصقت كله تخوني
وا راي نسكا راي ما بوشت اوكي لا عيني غير راي
ولا مو فنچا خصقت كله تخوني
انت رجع لك تفتر افچ خري تقتي
وا اما ولا نفي كل الله غنبر سبب زي وانا حنت ነገር كم بزي هتفتي
افچ كنا تفتن ديخا
اندعي افنچا مشفن سندي مسيلكي هبي
وا حتى انت تقبل لي
سوق الكتراي تاثري
وانا سمع وردني ودي
مع زوردني ساب زلخ
وي ماما هذا انت غزلي وي زاف انت غزلي افنጫ غزلي
واي افنጫ ደግዛዩ
انا غزلي هي ذاك اللي كاينه
ولك قلت رخيبه
اتحطي زاب فنጫ خزلا قدا ابي اخر رخيبكيا
اندعلكي دكان كريهم غيرك تحتيا
او تعيدي محتاج نور نوي
مو دكان خيرك زي تحتي نسخن قال كن زز حاله فريق كتحتا سمع لافت كلا ايكون كنن
او اي تحز اللي قلت حوي قريتها
دحان كيدي خدي طري وا
اتوا ما تعيدي
فعل فلت
واو تيز نايس ماسك كندي صبر ماسكيرا بجاخي
ما حق صبوتي
نكلتكم سيلو خسب فقدنيا تتخون
كنددي يدرق يبجخ
او سوري تماسكيرا كنكو بتعمل يتصبغ على زلا
كير طرح حلف بحر سجير متي سبيت اندما تخطمت احفرم دي خدقي
اوكي سوري
حقكم اذا كان ناس بليز مالي
يا غني لي
با انت تعالي لي باب جخاتكم
ماما انت نايم تابع على لدي
لو ما انت ندعني انت على الذي
كريزي دي لو ما عاد تدي دوال دلو
انت اي كريزي ديك
كريزي مالت دا معلت عبودات
اتخو هذاني ما حكى هذا مرعت كم ذات كده هذا كطبق الله عارس وانا طبق ما حدا كم جان كدرينا
انت تعالي لي انت تعالي لي انت البس لي
وانا تبجع مع كزني انت تبجع مع كزني
أتاخني
وانا هذا مسكسو علي أبي أنا حوي أبي أنا صراحة مسكس كأدم جا
هيلني
أبي أنا على ميدا عندك
الله خدو
والله فقدي فكر أنا مكخيب
من الله مسافي
واي أنت الله حبس كأنا حمام بخير قبرسي جنان عكت كويس أنا مليخة
هيلن
هي أنا مي
شكين كل ليلي
شكاني لأحالي فندي أنت كم تقول لك حجلة أنت إنا كان خدكم جنا قال كنا نك خبر حرارك علينا نحن دنجات أخذ جبلك حلنا حق يفنلو
هيلن انت هيدا غيرك اخصاب كندز تمارني
الدار بدل كاس قبل حجي سفلت أكان على
دحان زي حاولي مسيلك خحوكي
ولا هو ده سني خلقه أنا كم بدأت سبيت صريح أنت إيران نفسي يكونن ولا أغمز لنا نسمى عليك كرجاك له ده الحج نجيرك له بالله يا غيث نتني وناس النبي كيف نتني
all these folks doing this for her, and it's like the first day, she's got almost no budget. And she says to them, there's about 40 of them, how many of you think this is going to be effective? Not a single one of them raised their hands. But they liked Bonnie, so they kept sort of moving forward. And if you fast forward a few years, this process actually seems to have largely fixed their operations during difficult weather. And the message here is no matter what people are saying, keep them moving forward. Okay, we're pretty cool on time. The next one. So when you think about the problem of more, a lot of what you're doing is you're doing things that add cognitive load to people. You're adding more procedures, you're adding more process, you're adding more people. We'll talk about that more. And so there's a lot of rhetoric, and it's probably correct, that if you're doing that, you should follow A.G. Lafley's model and keep things Sesame Street simple. And there's a great set of studies by a guy named Babashev, who now actually teaches at the Stanford Business School. He did it earlier in his career, I think it was at Duke. And he did a pretty simple experiment where basically he had two groups of people. In one group, typical undergraduates, you randomly assign them to conditions, memorized a 2-digit number, I'm sorry. And so just like 16, that's why I said that, like 16. And the other ones did a 7-digit number, like 324, 2257. And then what they did was they walked to like the end of a hall, so about where the guy in the back is standing, and they reported the number, but in between was cake and fruit. So the question is, what's the effect of the cognitive load? Because trying to remember that 7-digit number is much more difficult than remembering the 2-digit number. And the ones who did the 7-digit number ate 50% more cake. So what happens is when you give people cognitive load, that they sort of lose the will and concentration on what's important. So you got to be careful with cognitive load. And one of my favorite examples, another Stanford graduate. This is an attempt at Intuit, and no, you can't read this. You're not supposed to be able to read this. To bring essentially design thinking to Intuit. They call it the D for D, or Design for Delight movement. And again, at one of these early sort of kickoff things, what they did was this was presented by Karin Hansen, who has a PhD in psychology from Stanford, and Scott Cook, who's the largest shareholder and co-founder of Intuit. And even the title was convoluted. Evoking positive emotion by going beyond customer expectations and ease and benefit delivery throughout the customer journey. So when we talked to Karin, and Karin let us talk about this in the book, she'll let me say this here. She says it to our classes. She comes in and gives lectures. She said people had two reactions to this. One, they couldn't understand what the hell we were talking about. And number two, they had this reaction that this too shall pass. And so we sort of had a problem, and pretty quickly, they went to this. And this is what they still use. This is their model. This is the only picture in the book. It's the light, really simple. And this is a case, I think, of sort of learning that making things as simple as possible, but no simpler is the way that you do scaling. And here I hasten to add, and there's certain management theorists, and I have sort of a running polite squabble with Gary Hamel over this, who's a well-known management guru. He's always talking about tearing down the bureaucracy and tearing down the hierarchy. The fact is that as your organization or project grows and gets more complex, you do need more roles, you do need a little bit more hierarchy, you do need a little bit of process. It's unavoidable. And one guy who learned this is Mr. Larry Page. And it turned out this is about 2003 or so, when Google got up to about 400 people, he started longing for the good old days when they didn't have those annoying managers around. So he got rid of all the annoying managers because he's Larry Page, so he could get rid of them. And he had a situation where there was one executive who had more than 100 engineers reporting to him. This did not last very long. She's laughing. Well, he learned the hard way. And now, by the way, I was just at Google yesterday doing something with a guy named Parsad Sethi, who runs sort of people analytics. And now they're totally into essentially first-line supervisors. They're totally obsessed with them and think it's one of their keys to their success. So they have learned. So the lesson here is that as systems and projects get bigger, you've got to add more complexity. But you've got to find some way to deal with it that sort of acknowledges and incorporates human limits. So Ben Horowitz of Andreessen Horowitz has got a great line that what you do is you put in just enough structure or process so you're giving ground grudgingly. So in his perspective is you wait for things to crack a little bit but not break. And another expression, and this is one of the heroes in the book, really interesting guy, Chris Fry, who before he was at Twitter, he's now head of engineering, but before he was at Twitter, he and another guy named Steve Green, they grew the development organization from 40 to 600 folks. And he's got this great line that the purpose of hierarchy is to destroy bad bureaucracy. And I think that's about right. Real quickly, we don't have enough time to go through sort of every aspect of what it takes to have sort of a good, if you will, non-friction-filled bureaucracy. But if I was going to pick one lesson, the thing that I think more organizations screw up than anything else, I would pick group size. There's a lot of evidence that as a team gets bigger than 5, 6, 7, 8, gets near 10, as Richard Haxman quote said, things get really bad. And essentially what happens is you get around 10 or 11, 12, 13, you end up spending more and more time on coordination chores and less time actually doing the work. And the other thing that happens is that you start having all these interpersonal problems, because you think about it, try to keep track of the personalities and moods of 10 or 11 people. It's like going to dinner and trying to have a conversation with 10 or 11 people is like almost impossible. That's why the average restaurant reservation in the US is actually 4 people, so a little evidence to support that. And a good example of a team that had some struggle with this was Larry Ellison's Oracle USA team. Eventually, the $500 million or so that Larry spent got them out of this. But a year ago, a little longer ago than that, there's a guy named Perry Claiborne. Anybody had classes from Perry Claiborne at the D School? No hands, one of my heroes. Anyhow, Perry's a great teacher. I just saw a hand. So Perry somehow or another, and I don't understand how this happened, got to know Jimmy Spithill, who was the guy who actually won the last 2 America's Cup as skippers. And we kind of got a call that they had some group dynamics issues. And so we went there, and it's a long story, but we actually brought in one of our friends from NASCAR and had him do a tire changing exercise. But in the process, they had this broken sailboat laying around. That's why they had time to deal with us academics. And you may remember the story. This was October last year. So what happened was, this is a 72-foot sailboat. And I am going to break the rules here. That's 72 feet. This is about 110 feet. It's a $12 million boat. This is about a $3 million mast, basically. So this is in San Francisco Bay. There's an ebb tide. The tide's going out. Now they're on the other side of the Golden Gate Bridge, and here's their boat, okay? And what happened, in part, there's lots of other explanations. These boats are really freaking hard to sail. But part of the problem was they had all been racing in 5-person sailboats, and they moved to 11, and they had all these coordination problems that they had to deal with. And by the way, they got better. They came back. They won the America's Cup. But that switch was really interesting. And by the way, one of the things that all the teams eventually figured out with the 11-person teams is everybody on these boats, they're mic'd and they have headphones for starts. It's so loud, 72 feet, they're going 50 miles an hour in like a 25-knot wind, you just can't hear anything. So what they figured out was they took the microphones away from 5 or 6 of them so they could only hear and not talk to keep down the complexity. So that was one of the solutions, to sort of make them like a small team. Okay, the next one. And I'll move through this one quickly. This one's easy. When you see effectiveness spread, sometimes there's this tendency, and sometimes I get paid to do this, like I come in and give a scaling speech, or I come in and give an innovation speech, or any of the other books that I've talked about in this event. And some executive will be under the delusion that this will actually change things to spread this sort of thin coat of effectiveness. Sometimes organizations do this with a little bit of training. But when you look where effectiveness actually spreads, what happens is you get a deep pocket of excellence, and that's spread from one place to the other. That's how the 100,000 Lives campaign worked. That's how a fast food chain we worked with did it a little bit. An example of something that was real simple and not too complicated to spread. One of the cases we found out about was in Iraq. There was an interesting thing came out. One group noticed that when the enemy threw RKG-3 hand grenades, sort of old Soviet Union hand grenades, and they threw them against something that was soft, they wouldn't blow up. So what they did was they put a trampoline on the side of the truck, okay? And something called the Army Center for Lessons Learned spread it really quickly, and it spread throughout Iraq. So that's Connect and Cascade. A more complicated one, this is Fifi. She's at the Pearl River plant, one of the cases that we wrote. And what they did was they kind of changed the mindset and approach when they were doing changeovers in a pharmaceutical plant to viewing it as a time to rest as opposed to being a pit stop. And they had these mini transformation, these little areas of effectiveness, and they spread it throughout the organization after that. And then finally, and this is our last point, and we're actually doing pretty good on time, that book From Good to Great. One of our arguments is that good to great is great, but when you look at the spread of effectiveness, what we really see is from bad to great, is what really happens, and here's our argument why. So there's a lot of evidence from all different parts of life that bad is stronger than good. Stealing, corruption, fights, laziness, incompetence. It's stronger than good. It infects teams. It's more contagious. There's a great article that students in my class read called Bad is Stronger Than Good that reinforces this. To tell you maybe the most important thing you will hear today, for those of you who want to maintain long-term personal relationships, there's good evidence that if you are in a long-term relationship and every time you have an argument or fight with your partner or just an unpleasant interaction, if you don't make it up with at least 5 good ones, you are in trouble. Things are not going to last. And the same thing happens when you go into the workplace. Bad interactions pack 5 times the wealth of good interactions. If you have one deadbeat or jerk in your team, it lowers performance by 30 or 40%. So there's a lot of evidence that in order for good to spread, what your job is to get rid of the bad first. So to give you one example, one of the class guests in our scaling class was a guy named Barry Feld. And Barry Feld took over Cost Plus stores. This was about 7 or 8 years ago. The stock price was 1. They were on the verge of going into bankruptcy. And so he had like 156 stores, and he walked around to most of them, visited most of them. He closed some of them, but he also did something at every store that he went to, which was the first thing he looked for was, do they greet me or the customers? And if they didn't, he saw that as bad behavior because it meant when people aren't greeted, they steal more and they buy less. So what he taught them to do, and he do it on the spot, is greet them and give them a basket so they'll buy more stuff. So that was one little thing. And then the other thing is he looked to see was if the bathrooms were clean, because he had learned from a career in retail that when the bathrooms are dirty, it's connected to a whole bunch of other problems. And eventually they were sold to Bed Bath & Beyond, and it was a good exit story. And getting rid of the bad is not necessarily always getting rid of sort of obnoxiously bad, difficult things. Sometimes it's little things that screw up your group. So this is from Chris Fry, who we're actually doing something at the Commonwealth Club next week, which should be fun. He's now the head of engineering at Twitter. So he takes over engineering at Twitter, and he goes to his first meeting with his senior team, and he looks, and they're doing what probably many of you are doing right now. They're all looking at their cell phones, and he says we're having votes, and they're still looking at their cell phones, they're not even listening. So he took their cell phones away from them and put them in a basket. And think about who works for Twitter. The way he described it is they all started vibrating because it was like taking away their heroin or something. And but he said we actually have shorter, more effective meetings now. And to me, that, and we all know about the distraction of cell phones and like, but to me that's a pretty good example of getting rid of something bad so the good can spread. Okay, we can move. There's the scaling principles, a couple of wrap-up comments, and we can have some discussion hopefully. The first thing, and this is really something that we learned, when we hear these words and we're talking to people who are trying to spread excellence, we don't have time to do it the way we really should, or we're going to take the path of least resistance, we start getting nervous. Because there's a lot of evidence that what ends up happening is, I'm going to get in trouble from this, but you'll end up like Groupon, where you want to do things so quickly that you screw up everything else and you got to go back and redo it. It's this notion, and in fact, if you look at research on how educational interventions spread, there's a lot of evidence that the most effective groups take the path of most resistance. So I wish I could tell you it was easy, but it is not easy.